Hello, I'm Sensei Alex Kakio, and the title of today's talk is The Four Noble Truths of Buddhism, Part 4. This is the fourth in a four-part series on the Four Noble Truths of Buddhism and how they can help us in everyday life. But before we get into that, I want to remind you to subscribe and hit the notification bell. That way you'll be notified when I post talks in the future. Also, if you enjoyed today's talk and want to do a deep dive into the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path, I'd encourage you to check out my book, Perfectly Ordinary, Buddhist Teachings for Everyday Life, which is available on Amazon. I posted a link to a sample chapter of the book in the description for this talk. So, the fourth noble truth of Buddhism states, the way to end desire is the Noble Eightfold Path. Now, the Noble Eightfold Path is the praxis or practical application of the Buddha Dharma. You can think of the Four Noble Truths as the philosophy, and the Noble Eightfold Path is the way that we put that philosophy into use in daily life. And it consists of 8 parts, thus the name. There's right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. Now I'll be speaking about each of those tenets individually in future videos, but there are a couple of things we need to know about the Noble Eightfold Path. The first being that it's divided into 3 parts. We have the wisdom teachings, right view and right intention, the morality teachings, right speech, right action, and right livelihood, and finally we have the meditative teachings, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. And it's important to note that all of these tenets are equally important. We can think of them as parts of a stool. A stool has 3 legs, and all 3 legs allow that stool to be extremely stable. In the same way, if we practice the wisdom, the morality, and the meditative teachings of the Noble Eightfold Path, our lives and our spiritual practice are incredibly stable. On the flip side, if we take 1 or 2 legs away from that stool, it tips over. It needs all 3 legs to be stable. In the same way, the Noble Eightfold Path needs all 3 of those tenets, wisdom, morality, and meditation, in order to stand on its own. The other important part of the Noble Eightfold Path that we need to remember is that it's put in a very specific order, but we don't just go through it one at a time. So that's to say, we don't do right view, we finish that, then we do right intention, we finish that, so on and so on. Rather, they all interconnect and feed off of each other. One could say that everything starts with right view, which is us seeing the world correctly, and right intention, which is us making a choice to live in the world in a way that doesn't cause suffering for ourselves and others. But after that, whether we use right speech, right action, right mindfulness, depends on the situation. So we may look at a situation and say we need right speech because we're having a conversation with someone and it's not going well, and we need to use our speech in a way to end suffering in that situation. Or maybe we want to get deeper insight into the reality or the truth of the world. In that case, we'd probably want to use right concentration. And right concentration, which seated meditation is one form of right concentration, allows us to see the world more clearly, sends us back to right view, and then the cycle starts again. So we learn them in a specific order because they feed into each other, but in practice, we bounce around quite a bit. And finally, what we need to understand about the Noble Eightfold Path is that it's a lifelong practice. So this isn't something that we do once and figure out and then we're finished. Rather, it's a lot like our desires. So as I said in previous videos, desire isn't a monolith. We have a multitude of desires, and we have to look at each one individually and figure out which ones cause sufferings, which don't, and how we want to work with that desire. Similarly, with the Noble Eightfold Path, this isn't something we do once, rather we look at each individual part of our life and we figure out which tenet of the path will help us in that situation. So it's a never-ending cycle, a lifelong practice, just like eating, sleeping, and breathing. So that's the talk for today. I hope it was helpful. If you'd like to read articles I've written on Buddhist practice, you can do that at my blog, The Same Old Zen. The URL for that is in the description for this talk. And if you'd like to ask additional questions or just chat with me, please leave a comment in the comment section below. I love talking with you guys, and I promise I'll respond. So until next time, Amitabha.